Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, April 21st. From the San Antonio Express News, my name is Luis Vasquez, and this is your Express Briefing. All of the stories you need to know to start your day. You can expect a high of 73 degrees under partly sunny skies in San Antonio today. If you're suffering from pollen or oak allergies, Wednesday will be another tough day, but relief is on the way. In Minnesota and Texas, friends and family react to the verdict in a watershed case involving the death of an unarmed and handcuffed black man under the knee of a Minneapolis police officer. Derek Chauvin was convicted Tuesday of murder and manslaughter for pinning George Floyd to the pavement last year. We have more on the verdict in just a moment. For 16 years, Delaney Matthew was a steady, sunny presence on the WOAI anchor desk, and most of those years sitting alongside Randy Beamer, reporting and reading the news. Then, in March, she was gone, an apparent victim of massive layoffs by the station's parent company, the Sinclair Broadcasting Group. 50-year-old Matthew would neither confirm nor deny that the layoffs were the reason she left the station. Still, she insists there's no reason to throw her a pity party. Take a look at the award-winning TV news personality's career and what's next for the Texas native in Richard Marini's latest article. For many in San Antonio, the sweeping and swiftly rendered guilty verdicts against former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin pointed towards progress for a nation profoundly shaken by deadly collisions of race and policing. After 3 weeks of testimony, it took a jury about 10 hours to find 45-year-old Chauvin guilty of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter in the death of George Floyd, a black man. City and county officials welcomed the verdicts, but only as one step towards racial justice. Check out what local leaders and other San Antonians told us about the verdicts over on our website. The survivors and victims' families of the Sutherland Springs mass shooting sued the Air Force, and one of their lawyers argued Tuesday that the government should bear most of the responsibility for failing to report disgraced Airman Devin Kelly's domestic violence conviction to a national database that gun dealers check during firearms purchases. In closing arguments, government lawyer Paul Stern told U.S. District Judge Xavier Rodriguez that he doesn't believe the Air Force should be held liable at all in the suit filed by the families. Our experts said this was not preventable, Stern argued. You can read more about the trial, when to expect a verdict, and what happens next in Guillermo Contreras' latest article. Gilbert Garcia writes, quote, Proposition A is the neglected child of this year's San Antonio election cycle. No one likes the process by which it was rushed onto the ballot. No one seems particularly satisfied with its broad language, and most of us have brushed it aside while rushing to take a closer gaze at Proposition B, the ballot measure which has amplified the divide between this city's police union and racial justice activists. Nonetheless, Proposition A has the potential to be a game changer for a community suffering from a chronic shortage of affordable housing. Read Gilbert Garcia's full column over at Express News to find out more. More than 28% of Texans 16 and older are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19, having received either one shot of the Johnson & Johnson or two of Moderna or Pfizer. But as scientists continue to study the virus and emerging variants, they're concluding that even the fully vaccinated may need booster shots to stay protected. So far, it's looking probable people will require a booster shot around the holiday season, but there are still many unknowns. Next up are your need-to-know headlines. You can find all of these headlines and more inside of your Express News subscription. Texas lawmakers on Tuesday cheered the guilty ruling in the trial of Derek Chauvin, who killed George Floyd last year, saying it was the verdict the former police officer deserved and a step forward. People on social media collectively gasped as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi thanked George Floyd, quote, for sacrificing your life for justice, unquote, directly after the police officer who killed him was convicted of murder. The first batch of jury duty letters for Bexar County residents may arrive in mailboxes this weekend. In-person trials are set to begin June 1st, but anyone concerned about contracting COVID-19 can ask to participate virtually or have their jury service deferred. The mother of a missing toddler was indicted Tuesday morning by a grand jury on a charge of tampering with evidence, the Bexar County District Attorney's Office announced. James Avi-Charez has been missing since January 4th. The Environmental Protection Agency instructed H-E-B to remove BioErase antimicrobial service wipes from store shelves within 30 days, the grocer disclosed in a lawsuit with Beaumont Maverick International. A pair of modern buildings rising along the Riverwalk will mix up the landscape in downtown San Antonio, revitalizing a block near City Hall and injecting more contemporary designs and dining into the city's urban core. A call for help ended in a fatal shooting of a man on a bus Tuesday during a confrontation with two Via Metropolitan Transit officers on the north side. There's so much chatter about California tech companies moving to Texas. While a few have landed in San Antonio, many choose other cities, usually Austin, writes Brandon Lingle in the latest Accelerator column. The Biden administration is done with the legislators' games around healthcare for the poor, writes Chris Tomlinson. If Texas does not act, the resulting economic chaos will gut the safety net system for the rest of us. To understand why this is not federal overreach, consider the history. Check out his full column over at expressnews.com. What if there were a smart coating that will continue to disinfect a surface long after it's been wiped clean? We may be closer than you think. Texas Biomedical Research Institute scientists are testing antimicrobial tech on various surfaces. Non-sports events are beginning to return to Alamodome in greater numbers, although restrictions remain in effect. The downtown arena hosted the annual San Antonio Home and Garden Show last weekend, the first consumer show at the city-owned facility since the COVID-19 pandemic took hold here more than a year ago. A former paralegal specialist in the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Antonio pleaded guilty Tuesday to a charge that she lied to a federal agent about divulging sensitive law enforcement information to drug smugglers linked to Mexican cartels. Quote, "We saw what we saw. On May 25th, for nearly 10 minutes, Derek Chauvin kneeled the last breath and last words out of George Floyd," writes the Express News editorial board. Read their take on the verdict over on our website. On the controversy around the proposed European Soccer Super League, Mike Finger writes, quote, "European fans resoundingly rejected the idea of making soccer more American. Instead, they're rallying around saving a system based on principles we think we value here but don't always put into practice." In March 2020, school buildings in San Antonio and across the country shut down almost overnight as educators scrambled to figure out how to teach from a distance while supporting students, school system employees, and their families. As more than 500,000 K-12 students in the San Antonio area started learning through laptops and tablets at home, the educational system began a transformation, radical, on the fly, and far from smooth. Among the early priorities was finding a way to quickly transition to online classes, a massive endeavor that proved to be a major logistical challenge in an area where thousands of students do not have reliable high-speed internet access. Today, many students are back in classrooms that will probably never return to normal. Andres Picon tells us why in his latest article. Back from a road trip that included 2 victories and 1 unlikely skirmish involving Patty Mills, the Spurs are itching to finish the season strong. The Miami Heat are in town for a game tonight that tips off at 7:30 p.m. Freezers are the best way to prevent food from spoiling for most of us, but come time for dinner, they can create something of a culinary roadblock. We have tips on how to freeze, thaw, and reheat brisket, chili, salsa, shredded chicken, and pulled pork. Lone Star released a line of hard seltzers, the new agave seltzers, and they're pretty good. Paul Stevens has a quick review over at expressnews.com. Domingo Restaurant and Otro Bar will open tomorrow in the Canopy by Hilton San Antonio Riverwalk Hotel at East Commerce and North St. Mary Street. After many of the team's football players entered last season overweight, UTSA delayed the start of spring practice to allow more focus on strength and conditioning. Coach Jeff Traylor is seeing dividends. And that's all for today. This is your Express briefing for Wednesday, April 21st. My name is Luis Vasquez. Please consider becoming an Express News subscriber to get in-depth coverage on all the stories you heard today. Also, be sure to rate and review this podcast inside of your Apple Podcast app, as it really helps the show. Have a wonderful day, everyone.